Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
You're listening to Serious Privacy, powered by TrustArc. Here are your hosts, Dr. Kay Royal and Paul Breitbart.
Hi, everyone. We still have some catching up to do. I have been traveling most of October, while Kay has been dealing with the fallout of Hurricane Helene. And this means that we have been out of rhythm quite a bit. The episode you hear today was supposed to come out last week already, and we discussed the recent guidelines of the EDPB on sub-processors and legitimate interest, as well as some recent case law from the EU Court of Justice. And also make sure to listen about the grumpy GDPR episode about those same sub-processor guidance notes. With November starting, we are trying to get back on track. In the coming weeks, you can in any case expect a lot of content from the Global Privacy Assembly in Jersey, where for the very first time, Kay, Ralph, and I were able to record with the three of us and a whole range of guests. For now, just sit back and listen to episode 34. My name is Paul Breitbart.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. It's been a minute since we met, Paul, because you were
we skipped a week. We skipped a week. I had a problem planning. I had a problem connecting while in Kenya. You were still dealing with the fallout of your house, obviously. The fallout of Helene.
It's fallout of the house, too. Let's just be honest. I'm calling this past month my series of unfortunate events, with the whole travel debacle with my mom, to COVID, to flu, to the hurricane, to other things that we can't discuss. And it's just, oh my gosh. I walked out to the backside of my hill because I haven't done that yet, but we were feeding deer and there were 4 baby deer. And of course we haven't seen them. But it's because our back is complete. It's a rather steep hill. So for the first time the other day, I walked down the back of that because I've been begging Tim to clear a path so the deer can come back up if they're still around. And I looked across from our backyard past my daughter's backyard, and there's about 15 trees just laid out like matchsticks uphill, and they're so big, it would take me and you to wrap our arms around the whole tree.
Wow.
They're huge, and they're just laid out in a perfect line like matchsticks. It's unbelievable. But this too shall pass, right? This too shall pass. So that is Kay's series of unfortunate events, which I'm sorry, people, our unfortunate events are impacting our podcast. We appreciate our fans sticking with us. And Paul and I are investigating ways, maybe going back to our original ideas, of how we can maintain the quality of the podcast for you, releasing on a weekly basis. Do you remember, Paul, originally we were going to meet like once a quarter and record like 9 or 10 episodes and roll them out on topics.
So how about we do that next week?
Oh, how about we do that? Yes, we're going to be together at the Global Privacy Assembly, which I'm really looking forward to, by the way.
Exactly. And
I debated canceling or not, but they're not even giving me a proposal on fixing the house until the 28th. So why should I stick around? Internet over there is probably better than on top of my hilltop anyway. But one of the things we did learn from our originally proposed idea was that our fans really love the breaking news stories that we give them. When something comes out, the EDPB has issued something, you review it, you've got it analyzed before I wake up the next morning, and we record a quick episode and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Here's the urgent information everybody needs.
Yeah, I'm looking at hopefully doing next week when you and I and Ralph are in Jersey, to just set up a mobile studio, have a lot of people come by, do some interviews, maybe some shorter interviews, 10, 15 minutes that we can then also use over time in combination with a quick recording.
Oh, absolutely.
So look out for those. We'll make sure to also get quite a few of the commissioners to talk to us, or at least we'll invite them to talk to us. But there will also be other people who are willing to sit down and talk about their experiences, their careers. Alexander Hanf will be there. I'm sure he'll be happy to come on. And there will be many more people who you hear from in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. Paul, I never asked about dress code.
Dress code for any conference, business casual. But for the gala dinner, it's a gala dinner.
It's a gala dinner. I was looking at the list of speakers and people that have announced that they're going to be there. It's going to be a really, really exciting time. But one of the things that we have glossed over completely was you warned me right before recording started that you have an unexpected question. You're not allowed to throw me for a loop like that.
I thought you were going to do yours first, and then I'll add my mom as a
No, you said you had one. Let's do it. Let's make it.
Okay.
Okay.
Elephant, zebra, or giraffe?
Elephant, zebra, or giraffe. Oh my gosh, there's such wonderful things about each one. I'm going to go giraffe.
Yeah. I thought I was going to agree with you before last week. But seeing the elephants in the wild in Amboseli National Park in Kenya, that was just such an amazing thing. Seeing elephants in a zoo just absolutely doesn't compare by seeing them in the wild. Just walking around the savannah, the whole bunch of them together, adults and also the small ones, and just being there, eating, and yeah, it was no words.
Wow, that's amazing. I expect to see pictures.
Oh, you'll get pictures.
Okay.
You'll get pictures. And indeed, the giraffe was a really good second.
Oh, that's awesome. And then zebras. I mean, what can you say bad about zebras, right? But when you said pictures, or I said pictures rhymes with stickers. Mm-hmm. And I did not order new stickers for GPA.
We can do without. We'll do without. I still have a few of the old ones. I'll bring those.
I have those too. We'll call them legacy stickers. Okay, so what do we have? Is this a week in privacy? We're going to cover some of the new news events since it's been a minute or two since we've done that.
It will be, but I think with a bit of a focus on legitimate interest, because there are a few things that are happening in the world of legitimate interest.
Oh, I love that. And we haven't really talked about legitimate interest in a while, I think, and we'll post the links to our prior podcast on legitimate interest, because I know we covered it in some detail when there were some decisions that came down. But corporations seem to get legitimate interest wrong on a fairly frequent basis.
Yes, and not only corporations, also data protection authorities get it wrong.
Oh.
Yes.
Whoa.
So
I'm trying to duplicate Scooby.
You may recall, there was this case from the Dutch Data Protection Authority about the Netherlands Lawn Tennis Club, who have sold the data of all their membership for marketing purposes.
Right.
And the Dutch Data Protection Authority had said, you cannot do that on the basis of a legitimate interest. This is a breach of law. And as per our guidance, any legitimate interest needs to be a legitimate interest, meaning it needs to be prescribed in law. That is already an interpretation of the legitimate interest principle or legal basis that was heavily criticized at the time by privacy professionals in the Netherlands and also around the European Union, but also by other data protection authorities who have said, no, this is way too strict an interpretation. You cannot just say that a commercial interest can never be a legitimate interest because it is not prescribed by law. So this case went to court. The investigation report was appealed by the Tennis Association. It went to the highest court in the Netherlands, and they asked prejudicial questions to the European Court of Justice. And a couple of weeks ago, they came back with their ruling, and they don't rule on the fact that whether or not the selling of these data for marketing purposes by the Tennis Association, whether that in itself was a legitimate interest.
Right.
What they do say is that there is indeed a possibility that a commercial interest can be a legitimate interest. So that part, the Dutch Data Protection Authority
Rightly
clearly
so.
lost. So a commercial interest, yes, it can be legitimate. There is nowhere in the law that implies that a legitimate interest can only be what is prescribed by law. But the court also goes on to explain, well, you cannot just stop at legitimate. You don't need to do the proportionality test and then also the balancing test. And
Yes.
that's something that the lower court now will need to do in this very specific case. The court does raise some questions on this specific processing. So it basically implies that indeed legitimate interest is not suitable. For example, because data was also sold to gambling companies and companies like that, where the court says we seriously doubt that this could be construed as a legitimate interest, but it is not for us to say. But by saying that, obviously, they do say
It's
it.
for us to say, right.
So this goes back to the Dutch court. I still think that the conclusion of the Dutch DPA that this was not an allowed legitimate interest, that will hold. But the whole argument on why it doesn't apply, why that legitimate interest doesn't fly, that will be problematic here. The Dutch EPA immediately responded to the court case and said, well, we still think we are right, and we'll wait what the lower court will say, but we have confidence that we will win the case before the lower court, which obviously is also very interesting when you have just received a slap on the wrist from the highest court of the European Union, making a statement that says, yeah, well, we still think that we are right. Especially in the midst
about to
of
be
a
the
court
wild,
case.
wild west over there?
A little bit. And I mean, this is something that is still before the courts. So also there, I don't believe that this is the smartest thing to do, to put it kindly, to actually put out a press release in the midst of a court case. I'm not sure that is very helpful and that the courts are going to be very enthusiastic about it.
Are they trying to get the public opinion on their side? Thinking that that's going to sway some sort of legal decision?
No, and also I'm not even sure that they will be able to actually get public opinion on their side with this. For one, because complex legal issues are not necessarily something that the public is going to be interested in. But I just don't know why they put out this statement. It's, what they say is that the Dutch DPA, the citizen comes first, hence our principled interpretation of the law, in which organizations may never sell people's personal data without permission just because they can make money doing so. That's what we've been working on, and as far as we are concerned, that is still how it should be, but unfortunately, that is not the legal reality. End of quote. So they grudgingly accept that there is a different ruling from the court, but I don't know how they see companies doing business without a legitimate interest. Not everything can be consent-based. Not everything can be contract-driven. So I think it is very difficult to look at this decision. And furthermore, if we then look, because also earlier this month, the European Data Protection Board adopted new guidelines on data processing based on legitimate interest, which is an update from their earlier decisions. And that already takes into account this decision from the Court of Justice of the European Union that I was just talking about. And the EDPB once again just spells out, for a legitimate interest to apply, you need to do three things. You need to demonstrate that there is a legitimate interest from the data controller or a third party. You need to do the necessity test to process personal data for that purpose of pursuing the legitimate interest, and the interest of fundamental rights and freedoms, the interest of fundamental freedoms and rights of individuals should not take precedence over the legitimate interest of the controller or a third party. So that's that balancing test.
And
so that
one
is
thing that you
not completely new.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it. I was done.
Well, one of the things that we've said before is these are businesses. controllers are not individuals in their individual capacity or in their household matters or anything along that line. Controllers are businesses. Let's be honest. They're businesses. I know they can be other things, but essentially, how can you possibly expect that their legitimate interest is not going to be a commercial one? It's going to always be a commercial one.
Well, yes.
Okay, almost always.
Almost always. Well, I mean, there could be other situations for sure to help others or whatsoever, and preventing fraud, which may not necessarily be primarily a commercial interest, but just saying that the interest should be defined in law, then you almost get to the stage of the legal obligation.
Right.
So what is then the difference there?
And preventing fraud is one of the other derogations.
Mm-hmm.
So, exactly. I mean, doing public good something for public service or, the public welfare is also one of the others. So I struggle from the first time we talked about this. I struggle to identify a significant amount of other reasons that would not be commercial for a controller to pursue.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, if you look at then this newest opinion of the Data Protection Board, they say, well, an interest may be legitimate if indeed it is lawful, so it is not contrary to the law, which is something different than it needs to be written down in law. It cannot be contrary to the law. It needs to be clearly defined. It needs to be precisely articulated. And it needs to be real and present and not speculative. So you can't have some cloud cuckoo land idea of maybe one day this is useful. No, it is on the need to know basis.
We're going to hold it for 30 years, hoping that one day there will be some reason that we have to go look at your data.
Yeah, that would not be called a legitimate interest.
Right. Might be called reality.
Don't get me wrong. I don't believe that selling the database of all members of an association for the association to make a bit more money, I don't believe that is a legitimate interest. I do believe that that should be something that should have been subject to consent.
Yes, but it's a general opposition to commercial cannot be legitimate versus this particular case, which doesn't sound legitimate at all.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's the whole legitimate interest discussion that is starting again in Europe. For those interested, the guidelines are available on the website of the European Data Protection Board. We'll include a link. And they are open for public consultation until November 20th. So if you have opinions on the legitimate interest, and especially if you have opinions on how legitimate interest should be interpreted, you can still respond to the public consultation until November 20th.
Good. And you should.
If you have the time, you should.
You should. I mean, that's one of the things that I encourage people to do is get involved in things like this, especially when professionals are asking how do they get more involved in privacy or how do they switch to privacy. Submitting comments on key legislation or requests for information, things like that, is a good way to get involved, mainly because there are some really, really nerdy geeks out there in privacy that love to go read all of the comments that were submitted.
Yep, absolutely. So this is where we stand on legitimate interest, but it's never boring in Europe, as you know. There are more court cases. There has been another Schrems case that I still need to read, so I can't tell you about it, even in summary, because I just haven't had the time to take a look at it. What's also out there is a new opinion requested by the Danish Data Protection Authority on the use of processors and subprocessors. And before I start my explanation of this opinion, which is not open for consultation, I would just want to refer our listeners to another privacy podcast, Grumpy GDPR, where Ria Alexandra Walle, who we had on the podcast before, and her co-host Milos, they also talk about this opinion, and they basically tear it apart. I listened to that on the train back home yesterday, and it made me chuckle. It made me laugh. I've completely
Were you
understood
giggling
their
out loud
anger.
on the train?
I was laughing out loud on the train. Yes, and you would do the same if you listened to that episode, because they are so right in their anger and in their grumpiness of this opinion, because basically what the EDPB says, and of course we know the theory, right? As a data controller, you are responsible for the whole chain of data processing for your processors and your sub-processors and their sub-processors, and you need to review all that information. But now they have put that down in writing that is actually how they see the world. And as a data controller, you are the one that need to draft the data processing agreements. You need to review the agreements of your sub-processors. You need to review the transfer risk assessment of your sub-processors and sign off on those. That is not how the world works today. That is not how we can work with sub-processors. Do you really think that Google will let me negotiate their sub-processing agreement or even give access to them?
Right. Google, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, all of these big tech companies that have them. But I will say that, and I had this happen recently to me to where a vendor said, no, we're not going to use your DPA. It does not follow the practices that we use, nor does it comport with the law. Don't tell me my DPA does not comport with the law without telling me exactly where do you think it doesn't comport with the law. Sorry. Do I need to repeat that? So don't tell me.
I think it's okay.
Don't tell me that a legal document that I may have participated in the construction of does not comport with the law in general terms. You can highlight specific pieces and tell me this part we don't believe that this part follows the law, which I'm fine. All attorneys have different opinions. Privacy officers have different opinions. That's fine. But what it seemed to boil down to was that they don't want to change what they've decided their actions are, regardless of the fact that our DPA reflects the contractual, and this doesn't matter what company I've worked at, our DPA reflects the contractual obligations we're under from our controllers. It may not be specifically required by the law, but it is a contractual obligation that we have from our controllers to pass down to our processor. So it's interesting that we know we can't negotiate with some processors. We all know that. But there are some that we can. And they need to understand that unless you've got the moxie to back it up, you really don't get to say no to your controller.
No, I agree. And I mean, we are a fairly small organization, so I encounter that probably on a weekly basis when looking at data processing agreements, that we are confronted that they want to use their paper, and that is how we start the negotiations. And some of them indeed say, well, go ahead, download our signed DPA or not even signed DPA from our website, and that's it.
Right. Well, and as we know, there is specific language in California that you have to have in the agreement in order for someone to qualify as a service provider and not a third party. There has to be very, very specific language. They're in the definitions part of the CCPA that a service provider means someone who does this and a third party is someone who doesn't do this. But those are the wordings you have to pull out and you have to put in your DPA, especially if you're global and not just limited to the U.S. But people still seem to think that GDPR, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, that GDPR is the only one driving the requirements of a DPA. And that's simply
it is.
not
I mean,
true.
GDPR is the holy mantra of data protection, right? Anywhere in the world.
Everywhere, right. But I mean, we get it. It's the driver. It's the gold standard. But guess what? There are other laws you have to adhere to. And it would behoove anyone offering products or services entering a DPA with a customer who would be either their controller or processor and up the road to a controller to try to understand the reasoning behind it rather than just saying no. I don't get that. And I know it's something that a lot of us struggle with. I mean, we've spoken a lot about vendor obligations and vendor oversight and what you have to do from a privacy perspective. Lots of other perspectives as well. The ESG, the anti-slavery, the anti-laundering, the general compliance, their financial status, whether or not their executives have been sent to prison for fraud. There's a lot of other things you have to look at vendors for. One of the funniest ones I ran up against that people objected to was asking whether or not the vendor was a minority-owned, woman-owned, veteran-owned entity or small business. And I was told that's just not something that Europe cares about. Well, on paper, Europe seems to care about it. Almost all the countries in the European Union have programs for minority-owned businesses or women-owned businesses. We even explained that it defaults to what your country's definition of woman-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned be. And I do get veteran-owned is not really a European thing. Or a small business. We would default to that, but that's another requirement. And when I say we, I'm going to caveat again. Y'all know I mean over experience, not necessarily my current employer. We are under requirements from our clients to support minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned small businesses. Not that we give them preferential treatment, but that we try to make sure if we go out and we do RFPs that they are equally represented or definitely considered. And it's one of the things that the whole world seems to be trying to encourage. And then yet for someone to say, oh no, we can't ask the vendor if they're a minority owned business. You can ask them. It's completely optional. You may not should ask them if they're an Arab-owned business or an Egyptian-owned business or a South American-owned business or a South African-owned business, because then you start getting into ethnicity and race and all of those good things that are sensitive data and protected. But minority-owned varies depending on what country you're in as to what's considered a minority.
That's true, but isn't everybody to some extent part of a minority?
Yes, but within their business, within their industry, not within their business, within their industry, they would know whether or not they would be defined as a minority-owned business or a woman-owned business. And the companies that do self-select into these programs, which are driven by the government, often want to brag that that's what they are. They want to say they're minority-owned or woman-owned. I get veteran-owned only really in the U.S. or a small business because there's a lot greater allowances for that. But again, it's optional. And it goes by their definition. And like I said, it doesn't mean that they necessarily get preferential treatment, but we are trying to assess whether or not we're giving equal opportunity. So we do give explanations as to why we ask these things. And sometimes, my employer is a small business or a woman-owned or minority-owned or veteran-owned business. So we're part of the demographic that's going through those questions. And when that has been the case, we have been very proud to stand up and say we're a woman-owned business or a small business or something. I don't know how I got down this tangent, Paul.
I also don't know, but would you then, if we are talking about that in any case, would you then also argue that there should be different kinds of contracts for minority businesses?
There might be. Well, especially if it's a small business. A minority-owned business could be a very large one, let's be honest. But there might be different terms that you would put in place with a small business that might be different than you would put in place with a mega tech company, because you know that most of the risk-based controls are subjectively valued on their resources and ability to deploy those controls. And then you have to make a risk-based decision as to whether or not you think them not having a certain control in place is adequately mitigated, or as a company, you're willing to take that risk. Now, some of these risks, don't let your business contact take. No. Maybe some of these risks need to be escalated to the head of the business line or the president of the company to see if they're going to accept that risk.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Something completely different. What's your point on using biometrics for access control? Things like facial recognition. Any objections?
I use it on my iPhone. I don't like it, but it's very, very convenient. But iPhones store it locally. We all know that.
But say you go to a holiday park.
Right.
Say you go to a holiday park or a cruise and you need to use facial recognition to get into the swimming pool or into your room or something like that.
I don't like that. I don't like it at all. And I don't know that I would be able to appropriately articulate exactly what my objections would be. I mean, the objections would be, I don't want my face in a big database of facial recognition technology, but if my face wasn't in the database, they wouldn't recognize it anyway. So there is a cause and effect here. This takes me back to when I worked at one employer. If there was an incident where the teeth X-rays were exposed by an unauthorized user. And people are like, we're like, well, they're like X-rays. It's like an X-ray of a leg bone. There's no one's name on it, no one's social security number, no personal identifier, no country, nothing like that. So the only way the person would be able to be recognized was if the unauthorized accessor also had the same X-rays and already knew the person's identity. So facial recognition kind of works the same way, right? It's a lot harder to search a crowd to find all bad actors by facial recognition technology than it is to search the whole crowd for these particular 3 faces that we have high standing warrants out. It's just a matter of work. But if I was on a cruise ship, do I want facial technology to let me into the pool? No.
Or check out the supermarket where you do your self-scanning before payment, and there is some facial recognition to see whether you are trustworthy or not, or whether maybe you should be double checked.
You know, back when I was a teenager and I worked at a grocery store, we used to joke that eventually you'll just be able to, put your hand down on a scanner and pay for your groceries rather than having to dig out a check or soggy money kept somewhere on the body that sweats. And that way you don't have to deal with it. Right? It is possible now. And do you know that there's a lot of places that won't accept cash now? And they won't, and even the ones that accept cash won't accept coin. So it's really...
That difference I haven't seen yet, but that there are places that do not accept cash for sure. There are quite a few of them here. And
which
I must say,
I carry cash.
Exactly. I never carry cash anymore. Almost never carry cash anymore. So that is not a big surprise.
But I will say at my doctor's office...
Go ahead.
At my doctor's office, they took a picture when I first registered there. They didn't ask me. They're like, oh, we just took your picture. I'm like, you just did what? Now, every time I walk in, they're like, hi, Kay, we've got you registered. And I'm like, oh my God, stop it.
I don't want this.
It might be convenient, but I'm perfectly okay walking up to the desk and giving you my name or putting my name on a list that I've checked in, as opposed to walking in the door and you going, yeah, we got you.
Yep. It's all about the necessity again, right? Is this necessary, yes or no?
Oh, it's necessary.
But the reasons I gave you these 2 examples is because these are also things that are now happening in the Netherlands and that are actually being enforced against. We had a supermarket chain that has seen a lot of petty theft because people just simply forget, between parentheses, to pay for items when they self-scan their groceries. They said, well, we'll use the cameras to do an extra risk assessment on whether you are trustworthy or not. Not just scanning the items or looking at the items, just really looking at you as an individual and on that basis assessing.
That's a totally fair, legitimate interest for a $2 pack of gum to compromise someone's privacy.
Exactly. So those have been switched off already. And there were 8 holiday parks under investigation because, indeed, they were using biometrics to allow people to access the pool and the playgrounds and things like that. So also there, the Dutch EPA has made an end to it, at least for most of them. Some are still under investigation and may be looking at a fine if they don't change their practices.
You know what's going through my mind, right? Is these people are pegged with an alarm that pops up that says most likely to run by the pool, most likely to pee in the pool, most likely to get sunburned if they're out here for too long. I mean, really?
Yeah, and I mean, who comes up with these ideas? What extra convenience would it bring you to enter the pool with facial recognition instead of a tag that you are given at reception? The only thing is that the tags could get lost. Well, that's a business calculation.
And then they have to create more tags, which is totally worth violating someone's privacy.
And buying a multi-100,000 euro system for facial recognition. Yeah, that's a lot of tax.
Lord have mercy. I'm going to have to come up with some sort of rating system like they do for movies with the 2 thumbs up or the 5 stars or something. And I have a feeling it's going to have either something to do with eye rolls or something to do with wadding up a piece of paper and throwing it at the screen and say, this is worth 3 spitballs.
Yeah, or just red crosses. Yeah. So yeah, that's rant over for this week, I would say. Maybe not the most positive discussions that we're having, but next week will be different. Expect a host of episodes coming right at you next week and onwards from the K Royal Jersey Showground in Jersey, where we will try to bring as many people to our microphones as we can get. But we already have quite a few interviews lined up. So don't worry, you'll get more interviews. You get to live everything that's happening in Jersey if you're not there. For the rest, do continue to join the conversation on LinkedIn. You'll find us under Serious Privacy. You will find Kay on social media as Heart of Privacy, myself as Europol B, also on Blue Sky and Mastodon and wherever. And it's almost an extra day in the week that you need now to post and follow anything on social media with all of these platforms. But hey, that's where we stand when multi-billionaires go crazy and start mixing themselves in politics. We'll take this out. Kay is slowly dying on the other end of this microphone. I still hope to see you next week in Jersey. I hope to hear from all of you soon. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on Nimity research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.